The Converted Man here. Well, I stumbled onto a YouTuber that has 7 subscribers. His sub count will go up because I'm talking about him probably. So he's new to YouTube. Welcome. Well, he's got a few videos up, but welcome to YouTube where religion comes to die. Had to say that. It's a thing. Okay. He's got videos, 3 of them right now. That he's going to be asking 10 questions to atheists, and if you can answer all 10, then he'll convert to atheism. Yeah. So there's problems I have with this. It's easy to make a question that nobody can answer because it's a loaded question. For example, a malformed question would be another example. There are questions to which there is not an answer. How is a raven like a writing desk? That question has no answer because it's written to have no answer. What does a square triangle look like? Would be an impossible question to answer. When did you last stop beating your significant other? It's a loaded question. You have to untangle it to answer. A malformed question, one that has words where it doesn't belong. Did you see when I went over there to that store the other day with the person that you know? Huh? Wait, what? There's some clarifications needed. No, I'm not going to read the Book of John. I already read that. It's boring. So boring. Rather read Revelations. At least that's fun. But now that I know it's about King Nero, it's not as fun as it used to be. Oh well. Here we go. Gonna answer your 3 questions, which is actually 3 questions and then a thing that you want people to do. So here we go. Your first video asks the malformed question: how do you have a conscious mind that came from the unconscious? It's malformed because it assumes that it came from the unconscious, which doesn't make sense. That's not how evolution works, so no to that. How do you have consciousness? What are you trying to ask? Like how it works, or why we have it, or what it is? When did it arise during the evolutionary advancement of the human species? I mean, what are you asking? When does it develop during birth from the tiny, eggs to the actual baby? At what point do we gain consciousness? I mean, what are you asking here? If you're asking what it is, well, we call it an emergent property. It is a chemical electrical process in my brain that produces this thing that we call consciousness. And recent findings, there was this gentleman who had this rather unfortunate issue in his brain, where a lot of fluid that's in your head filled up where his brain is slowly enough so that his brain was able to adapt to the changes. And he has a very small bit of brain around this large liquid. And they've drained it or did whatever they needed to do to keep him alive and whatnot. Because if he keeps losing brain, eventually he won't function. But at any rate, he was still conscious. He had memories. He was able to talk correctly, etc., etc. So they were quite surprised to find that you didn't need as much brain as we thought for consciousness. But that might be only the case because the brain basically is able to teach itself how to do functions of other parts of itself, and that's what it did. And it did it slowly, and that the fluid built up slowly enough that this was a thing that it could have done. And if you had somebody born that way, that it might be that they would not have consciousness. There's this young girl, and there's other people that have this condition where they're born with only the brain stem. So they're able to eat and drink and breathe and defecate and that's it. They will never be able to walk. They will never be able to talk. Or they can see, but they can't process any of that. They can hear, but they can't process any of that. They can smell, can't process any of that. So they are alive, but they will never have what we would think of as consciousness. Or if they do, it's so rudimentary that they might as well not. So what conscious is a scientific study that's still ongoing. We have a lot more to learn about it. And even if we can't explain it, that doesn't mean anything. Because all that is would be an appeal to ignorance. So, well, you don't know how to answer that question, therefore, you have to read the book of John now. Haha. Really? How about I'm going to challenge you with a better challenge that's more coherent. Beep, beep, beep. I had a beep, beep, beep. That's weird. Second question. If there is no God, this is a doozy. If there's no God, then why are there so many religions in the world? Man, that's really hard to answer. Not at all. I'm being sarcastic. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. People can be fooled. People can be indoctrinated. People can lie. Social settings are settings that we navigate towards, and we are evolved to be social creatures. And I'm going to guess that you probably have problems with evolution, so you're probably like, oh, evolution, you can't bring that into it, because that's not true. I'm gonna guess that you're one of those, but I could be wrong. Don't know which version of God you believe in, but you held up the Bible. That doesn't really tell me much. I mean, you're a Christian, maybe, but which version of Christianity? I don't know. At any rate, hopefully you don't have an issue with evolution, but I'm gonna guess that you do. But at any rate, we're evolved creatures, are pattern-seeking and need to have social situations, and our ability to believe things and our ability to gravitate towards simple answers is something that gives us an extreme survival edge. But there's limits to that, and you have to overcome those limits to be able to begin to look at and understand the world through science or even through logic. You have to kind of get out of this idea of thinking that things have simple explanations. But nonetheless, there are many religions in the world because people believe things. They believe in strange things. They can believe in nonsense things. They can believe in made-up things. Because we're social creatures, we want to be around people. And so if everyone is saying, I saw an accident, you're more likely to say that you saw an accident, even if you didn't. Even if you absolutely know that there wasn't an accident, you're more than likely to agree with the group. There have been studies done on this. There's a classic one. People on an elevator that are all turned facing the back, and so the person that's not in on the experiment walks into the elevator, and they look around. They're kind of like, they push their button for the floor, and they're very confused. And many people will face the back of the elevator, more than you would think. But there are, of course, people that won't. But the mentality to be part of the crowd. Maybe these people know something that I don't know. Maybe that wall's gonna open. I don't know. There must be a reason they're doing this. I better do what they're doing. This is very simple concepts that we've explored with different social experiments. Pattern seeking. We can go to the kids and the pointy rocks. That you ask kids at a certain age, why is the pointy rock there? Is it just there because it's there, or is it there so that the animal can scratch itself? And kids up to a certain age will say that it's there for the animals, and then after a certain age they'll tend to drop away from that and say that it's just there because it's there. So the desire to find meaning and purpose and assign it to things is something that is with us at a young age. And we might let go of it, or we might retain some of it. And if you're told very early on that things are true, and everyone continues to insist that they're true, and everyone acts as if they're true, you're going to believe that. That's called indoctrination. If everyone celebrated Santa Claus as much as they do God, there would be a religion about Santa Claus. Cult leaders convince people that they are either a deity, or that they're in direct communication with the deity, or they're a reborn deity, or what have you. And they can get thousands and thousands and thousands of people to follow them. Because that social need is there. That need to be able to explain things in an easy, simpler fashion is there. The need to be part of a group is there. It's easy to explain why there's so many religions. But why are they all different? See, if there was a real God, wouldn't they all begin to point towards the same God, not point to different ideas and concepts and versions of God? Even within Christianity, you have thousands and thousands of different denominations that insist that you have to worship this way or that way. You must do the rituals that way or this way. You can't do music that way. You must do it this way. The church can't be this size. It must be that size, etc., etc. The men must have a separate service than the women, or whatever. There's all sorts of different ways. Some of the Pentecostals, not all, but some, maintain and will proclaim and will say that if you don't speak with the gift of tongues, if you don't speak in tongues, you don't have the Holy Spirit. Church of Christ maintains and will proclaim, not all of them, but some of them, that you must be baptized in full immersion. Then there's a version that I experienced that not only said that, but said you have to also understand that that's the situation and accept that that's the way it is for it to count. And everyone that didn't get it done the right way is screwed. They're not going to heaven. So there are many different ideas about God, not like what we find in science, where instead of a disagreement on how things work, we come to a agreement on how things work. So if there was one singular God, then that's what we would see. We'd see a slow trend towards an agreement on what God is. Although maybe you could argue for pantheism, there's many gods, and that's why we have so many religions. But that wouldn't be your religion. Then you also ask, in that same video, by the way, which would mean that that's two questions in one video where you're supposed to be asking one question, and I don't know why you didn't just do all 10 questions in one video. Maybe you want to stretch this out longer so that you get more hits on your videos, or whatever, I don't know. But at any rate, you then ask, why is it that everyone, including you, including me, wants to worship something? Well, that special knowledge you just performed to know what I'm thinking, know what I'm feeling, is invalid. You cannot know whether I want or do not want to worship anything at all. And in fact, I don't need or want to worship anything. I don't think there's anything worthy of worship. And if I did find something it would not be something that demanded or asked to be worshipped. The moment that you ask for that means you're disqualified as a thing, because you're too egotistical. You're wrapped up in yourself. You want me to worship you, whatever that means, by the way, because what is worship? And what worship is depends on what religion you're in. But no, I don't have that desire. I don't have that need. A lot of people do, but not everybody. Which is what you assume with your loaded question that contains special knowledge that you can't possibly hope to know. But again, those that need or want or desire to worship something probably had that introduced as a concept to them by somebody else. Do you feel like there's just something missing from your life? This hole, this Jesus-shaped hole in you. You just need to fill it with Jesus. Wow, I do feel like something's missing from my life. Must be that. People can feel like they're missing something from their life, and it's usually a community of people to be around, to hang around, to talk to chill out with. People that say kind words to them, familiar faces that they feel comfortable being with. Being a gamer, I loved going to the game store and playing different games with people. I don't have one around here, or I'd be doing that, because I enjoy the social contact, and I don't need religion for that, and I'm not worshiping anything. And I found that understanding the real world, understanding how things work, gives me just as much, if not more, of a dopamine kick as worship ever did. And that's what worship does, by the way. It produces a dopamine chemical response in your brain that you can get from going to concerts or doing something interesting or eating chocolate or having sex. So, you know, we like it because our brains give us a reward for doing it, and as those that are born needing it, I don't know that that's a thing or not, but it would be also explained by evolutionary process, that we are social creatures and that we have this desire to be with each other and to care about each other. In your third video, you didn't ask a question, which means we do have 3 questions because you asked 3, but you kind of screwed up. If you're intending that this was a question, you didn't ask a question, you just told us, write down 3 contradictions in the Bible, which my response to that was to link you to the Infidels page that has all the different Bible contradictions you could ever want. There's plenty of them, but you know what? That doesn't matter. You can write a book without contradictions. That's not the difficult part. And it is surprising that the Bible has these many contradictions and people just deny that it has contradictions. I do not get that. But nonetheless, you could write a book that had 0 contradictions. That wouldn't make that book true. You could also have a book full of contradictions and it could still contain some truth. Obviously, the contradictions couldn't both be true. One could be true, but both could be false, and you wouldn't be able to know which one. But if you want, off the top of my head, I don't know, list Judas, how did he die? Because he both hanged himself and also didn't. And some people say, well, he hung himself and then like his guts spilled out or whatever, and they try to do this fancy footwork. Genesis 1, Genesis 2. Which order did it happen in? Because, like, the order that things were created changes. So, which is it? I don't know. That's 2. Let's see if I can pull out a third from my memory. Did God make... No, I don't know if God making evil and being all good would be a contradiction. It seems like one, but I don't know if that would count. Man, I don't know if I can pull a third one out of memory. I don't know. I kind of want to say Jesus' lineage, because one lineage has one set of names and the other lineage has a similar set of names, but some names are missing and some are added. So are we looking at two different lineages, or are we looking at the same lineage but one is flawed? What's going on there? I don't know. That would be maybe the third. As far as... So that would be that. But yeah, contradictions are not necessarily something to invalidate a thing, but it does pose a problem for you guys, especially if you want to insist that the Bible's inerrant. And I find it hilarious that you hauled up what was it? I want to say the New International Version. I'm gonna double check here. Yeah, New International Version. New International Version. That means there was a international version. So what changed from that to the new one? A lot of words changed around. A lot of words. And you might say, well, they're minor changes. So apologists love to say, well, they're minor changes. Really? Are they? Any change is bad. I don't care if it's minor or not. And that's the problem, is there's no consistency. And there would be King James onlyists who would tell you, well, you're going to hell because you're not reading the King James Bible, which is the worst translation possible. But nonetheless, they would insist that you have to read that Bible because it's the best Bible of them all. And yes, I've heard that. Don't even get me started on the Israelites who think all white people are cursed, and the sect of Christians, and I'm not sure what their name is off the top of my head, that consider all black people cursed. You've got both versions. You have the black nationalist, right? Jesus was totally black, and then you have the other way around. So yeah, and it's based loosely off of Cain's mark. Speaking of Cain, if you are a literalist, where's Cain? Cain was cursed to walk the earth forever. He can't die. You're telling me that we haven't found or noticed somebody that is either the same age or super old, or however that works? We just haven't noticed this immortal among us. Is he hiding somewhere? But man, if you could find him, that would really prove your point. Atheism doesn't need to convert you or deconvert you. We're not interested in that, typically speaking. There might be some that are. I'm only interested in if you are willing and able to question what you hold most dear. And I want you and everyone to learn informal logic. If you knew informal logic, these questions would not be the questions you ask. Now, my challenge for you is to give me one of these three things. Empirical evidence, which is evidence that can be detected by either the naked eye or a machine-assisted device of some sort. The microscope, a telescope, electronic microscope, oscillation scope, what have you. Okay? It's something that can read and produce data. Radiation meters, etc. This is all empirical evidence. Alright? Or a repeatable test. Or a logically coherent argument. Any one of those three for your particular version of your particular God. Just give me one of those three things, or all three. If you have empirical evidence, you're not going to need the other two. If you have a repeatable test, I'm not going to ask you for the other two. If you have a logically coherent argument, I'll investigate more into what you have to say. And bleep, if you have a logically coherent argument, I'll read the book of John again, out loud, on this channel. But I strongly suspect you're not going to respond to my video in any way, shape, or form. Maybe you'll leave a text comment, but I kind of doubt it, and I strongly suspect that this is all just one big, long, aha, gotcha moment that you're waiting for. But if you want questions, oh, I've got questions. What's God made out of? Where is God? How does God's power work, and where does it come from? How does God's mind work? When did God decide to make the universe? Why this universe? Why are we not in a spiritual form, if there is a spiritual format that we could exist in? Why not simply keep us in heaven? Why go through the time and trouble of making material at all? Why is the universe so huge if we're the only thing that matters? Why is the requirement that, based upon vague ideas that may or may not be about belief, is Jesus God? Or the Son of God? Or something else? Did Jesus even exist? Was Mary a sinner? Who recorded Jesus' trials in the desert? I mean, nobody was there when he went out, got tempted by some temptress, in the good translations, and the bad translations, tempted by Satan. Who recorded all that? I just don't picture Jesus coming back to his disciples and being like, yeah, I spent 40 days and nights in the desert, got tempted by Satan. No big deal. And they're like, okay, let's write that down. Or let's tell somebody and they'll write it down. Eventually, at some point. Like, who was there to record that thing happening? Did, like, someone sneak out and, like, watch him stay within earshot, hiding behind rocks or something? I'm totally gonna tell this to everybody. The narrative of the Bible is weird. The supposed author knows they're gonna die and then gets their head chopped off. Who's writing this? Why does it seem like a story and not history? Why are so many current religions of that time, I should say past religions that were around during that time, why are so many of them very close, if not identical, to that religion? Why have there been so many changes to the Bible throughout time? I've got lots of questions. You have only one that really matters to me. Are you seriously willing to question what you hold most dear? Or are you just doing this video because you're a street preacher and you want people to give you attention, yada yada yada? Be honest. Unless and until I have a logically coherent argument, I'm going to continue to stay skeptical of your conclusions.